The story you're about to hear isn't just another Sister Wives update. It's a story of transformation. Because for the first time in over a decade, Janelle Brown isn't just surviving, she's finally living. When viewers first met Janelle, she was the calm one, the steady one, the quiet backbone of a family that often spun out of control. She wasn't dramatic, she wasn't loud, and she wasn't desperate for attention. But behind that calm surface, there was always a quiet exhaustion. The kind that comes from years of compromise, shared dreams that were never really hers, and a marriage that demanded loyalty but offered very little in return. Today, everything has changed. Gone are the shared bank accounts, the endless financial battles, and the suffocating version of family unity that always seemed to benefit everyone but her. Now, Janelle Brown stands on her own financially, emotionally, and spiritually free. But freedom didn't come easy. It came with long nights of doubt, near bankruptcy, and the painful realization that the family she helped build was falling apart right in front of her. It came after losing her home, her financial safety net, and the illusion that things would ever go back to normal. And it all began the day Janelle realized that she'd spent most of her life building a dream for everyone but herself. That realization hit her like a wave. It forced her to stop trying to prove her worth to Kody Brown, to stop fighting for equality in a system that never treated her equally, to stop living in survival mode. That's when the transformation began, quietly, like the first sunrise after a long, dark night. Because when you've spent your entire adult life building someone else's version of happiness, the scariest and most powerful thing you can ever do is start over. In this story, we'll trace Janelle's journey from financial chaos to complete independence, the secret investments, the emotional breaking points, the lessons she learned from losing everything, and how she built her comeback while everyone else stayed trapped in Kody's shadow. Her story isn't just another Sister Wives storyline. It's a blueprint for anyone who's ever been told to stay quiet, stay loyal, and settle for less. It's a story about finding freedom when no one believes you can. Coming up next, the moment Janelle realized her financial future was slipping away, and how one shocking conversation with Kody Brown changed everything. For years, Janelle told herself that patience would pay off, that if she just kept the peace, stayed responsible, and did what was expected, everything would balance out in the end. But the truth was, the scales were never even. And she was the only one who didn't realize it. It started small, Kody talking about investments, land deals, and building dreams that always seemed to circle back to his own vision. Janelle contributed everything she could. Every paycheck, every savings deposit, every small financial decision went through the family system. On paper, it looked like teamwork. But in reality, it was control. Coyote Pass was supposed to be the turning point. The land they all bought together was meant to be their legacy, a fresh start where each wife could build her own home and live in peace. But when Janelle looked closer at the numbers, something didn't add up. The payments weren't equal. The ownership shares weren't fair. And somehow, despite her sacrifices, she didn't have a home to call her own. She had put money into the dream, but the dream wasn't designed for her. It was built around Kody and Robin, the couple at the center of everything. Every financial plan, every decision, every benefit somehow found its way back to them. Janelle's breaking point came one evening, after another conversation that went in circles. Kody had been talking about the land again, how they needed to move forward, how the wives had to show faith in the plan. But when Janelle asked simple questions, about whose name was on the property deeds, about how the money was being divided, Kody didn't have answers. Or maybe he just didn't want to give them. That's when it hit her. She wasn't part of a family financial plan. She was a contributor to Kody's personal empire. The anger that followed wasn't loud or explosive. It was quiet, cold, and focused. The kind of anger that comes when you realize you've been loyal to a lie. Janelle didn't scream or fight that night. She just stopped believing. From that moment, her perspective shifted. She began keeping notes, asking questions, and paying attention to every transaction. And for the first time in years, she started thinking about money as her own. Not the family's, hers. It was a small mental shift, but it changed everything. Because the second Janelle stopped seeing herself as a dependent and started seeing herself as an individual, she broke free from Kody's financial hold. She knew leaving would be hard. She knew it would come with judgment, loneliness, and financial instability. But she also knew staying would cost her something much greater, her future. The next few months would test her strength in ways she never expected. But they would also open doors she didn't even know existed. Coming up next, the collapse of everything Janelle thought was secure, the financial fallout that forced her to rebuild her life from nothing. The signs of collapse started long before anyone said a word. They were small, quiet, and easy to ignore at first. A missed payment here, a delay there, a tense phone call that ended with someone pretending everything was fine. But deep down, Janelle knew things were crumbling. The financial system that had once held the family together was now pulling it apart. Every time Kody tried to talk about family unity, it really meant more money from Janelle's pocket. Every so-called group decision felt like another way to tighten control. For years, Janelle had balanced the books for everyone. She tracked bills, managed accounts, and kept the family afloat while the others argued over emotions. She was the quiet accountant of chaos. But even the most organized person can't make numbers work when the system itself is broken. The breaking point came when she realized she had nothing left to show for decades of sacrifice. The money she had worked for, saved, and trusted into joint accounts was gone, spent on shared expenses, loans, and homes that weren't hers. When she looked at the paperwork, she didn't see ownership. She saw emptiness. The Kody Pass property, the supposed family dream, was still unfinished. The plots weren't developed, the permits weren't paid, and the dream home she once imagined had vanished into a pile of debt and tension. When she finally admitted it to herself, the truth felt like a punch in the chest. She was nearly broke. She had spent her adult life investing in a family that didn't invest back. And when she tried to talk to Kody about it, his response made things worse. He didn't see it as a problem. He saw it as loyalty. "It's all for the family," he said. "You just have to have faith. Faith doesn't pay bills. Faith doesn't build homes. Faith doesn't create stability." Janelle had run out of faith. When she finally looked at her bank account and realized how thin her savings were, the fear hit her hard. She had children still finding their way in life, responsibilities that never ended, and a future that suddenly felt very uncertain. For the first time, Janelle faced the kind of reality she had helped others through for years, financial insecurity. But she wasn't going to let it destroy her. That fear lit something inside her, a determination that no longer relied on anyone else's approval. She decided she would rebuild her life, brick by brick, on her own terms. It wouldn't be easy. She had no large savings, no property in her name, and no steady source of income beyond small ventures she'd started on the side. But what she did have was experience. She knew how to budget. She knew how to make hard choices. And she knew that no one, not Kody, not the family, not TLC, was coming to save her. That realization was painful. But it was also freeing. Sometimes the collapse isn't the end. It's the beginning of a life that's finally yours. Coming up next, how Janelle picked herself up from nothing, and the first risky move she made that would change her future forever. When the dust of the collapse finally settled, Janelle stood in silence and took a deep breath. She didn't have a plan, not really. She just knew she couldn't live like that anymore, constantly waiting for permission to make her own choices. For the first time in her adult life, she wasn't thinking about what Kody wanted. She wasn't thinking about what the family expected. She was thinking about herself. What did she want? What did she need? What could she build with her own two hands? Her first step toward freedom didn't happen in some dramatic moment of rebellion. It started quietly, with a single decision, to control her own money. Janelle opened her own account. It was simple, but symbolic. For years, every dollar she made went into shared family accounts that Kody and Robin ultimately controlled. Now, her income would go directly to her, and only her. That tiny act of independence felt like oxygen after years of suffocating. It was hers, her money, her future, her choice. But with that freedom came fear. Bills were due, and her financial cushion was thin. The family wasn't helping. TLC wasn't paying what people thought. And she still needed a roof over her head. That's when she took a risk most people never would. She decided to live in an RV on the Kody Pass property. The same land that once symbolized Kody's grand vision would now become her test of survival. To outsiders, it looked like a downgrade. A woman in her 50s, leaving a comfortable home to live in a trailer. But to Janelle, it was a declaration of independence. She parked the RV on the land that she had helped pay for, and even though it didn't legally belong to her yet, it was the first time she felt like she truly owned something. Every night she sat outside under the open sky. She felt the quiet power of being alone, but not lonely. It wasn't glamorous. The desert got cold at night, the Wi-Fi barely worked, and there were days when she questioned everything. But every hardship reminded her why she was doing this. She wanted to prove to herself that she could survive, and even thrive, without Kody's support. And slowly, something inside her began to shift. When you lose everything that defined you, you discover what you're really made of. Living alone on that land became her test. Each problem she solved, each day she made it on her own, was a reminder that she didn't need Kody. She didn't need the shared system, and she definitely didn't need anyone to give her permission to exist. But survival wasn't enough. Janelle wanted stability. She wanted growth. And she wanted to rebuild her life in a way that no one could ever take away from her again. That's when she made her next bold move, the one that would change everything about her financial future. Coming up next, how Janelle turned a small business idea into a steady income stream, and the secret partnership that helped her rebuild her life from the ground up. She started small. Janelle didn't have investors, she didn't have property, and she didn't have a long-term contract. What she did have was determination and a lifetime of experience holding everything together while others fell apart. She knew she needed to create something that gave her control, something that couldn't be taken away when relationships or TV deals ended. So, she went back to what she knew best: structure, planning, and consistency. Her comeback began with a wellness business. Some fans laughed when they saw her promoting health products online. They thought it was a side hustle, a short-term patch. But for Janelle, it was more than that. It was proof that she could generate her own income without asking anyone for permission. The early days were rough. The money was small, the hours were long, and the self-doubt was real. But every order, every new client, every positive message reminded her that she was building something with her own hands. It was a new kind of work, independent, digital, and personal. She wasn't depending on Kody's decisions or the family fund. She was depending on herself. As her business slowly grew, Janelle started to see numbers in her account that she hadn't seen in years. Real earnings, not shared income or pooled resources. And with that came confidence. The freedom wasn't just financial, it was emotional. For years, she had been treated like a supporting character in someone else's life. Now, she was the main story. Her energy began to change. She smiled more. She spoke with more certainty. Fans noticed. In interviews, her tone shifted. She didn't talk about what we were doing anymore. She talked about what she was doing. There's something powerful about earning your own way after being told you couldn't. It wasn't about revenge or competition. It was about peace. Behind the scenes, she started learning more about business, savings, and investments. She read books about wealth management, something she had never taken the time to do before. She started working with people outside the sister wives circle, people who saw her not as Kody's wife, but as Janelle Brown, a capable woman with a sharp mind and a lot of untapped potential. And the results showed. Within a year, Janelle's financial stability improved dramatically. She had money in her account, her bills were paid on time, and she didn't have to justify a single expense to anyone. She didn't just survive, she started to thrive. But even as her new life took shape, there were moments when the past came knocking. Old patterns, old expectations, and old relationships that refused to let go. Kody wasn't ready to accept that Janelle didn't need him anymore. And when he tried to pull her back into his world of control and dependency, Janelle faced a new kind of test, one that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with freedom. Coming up next, the confrontation that sealed her independence forever. The moment Janelle finally stood up to Kody and said the one word that changed everything. It was a quiet afternoon when it happened. No camera crews, no lights, no staged argument for television. Just two people sitting across from each other, surrounded by years of unresolved tension. Kody had come to talk about the future, but for Janelle, there was nothing left to discuss. She'd heard it all before, the speeches about loyalty, family unity, faith, and trust. Every word wrapped in control, every promise leading her right back to dependence. He started, as he always did, talking about how the family needed to stick together, how they could still make things work, how she needed to show commitment. But this time, Janelle didn't nod along. She didn't smile or agree just to keep the peace. She sat there, calm but unshakable, and waited for him to finish. When he finally did, she spoke. Her voice was steady, almost too quiet, but it carried the weight of years. "Kody," she said, "I've given everything I could give. I've supported you when I didn't agree. I've stayed when I should have left. I've believed in things that were never real. But I can't do this anymore." Kody looked at her like she was speaking another language. He tried to remind her of the promises, the faith, the plan for Coyote Pass. He even tried to talk about love, though his words sounded mechanical now, hollow, rehearsed. Janelle just shook her head. "This isn't love. It's control," she said. "And I'm done being controlled." There was no yelling, no dramatic outburst, just truth, cold, simple, and final. That one sentence shattered years of silence. For the first time, Janelle didn't try to defend herself. She didn't explain or apologize. She didn't justify her decision. She just stood in her truth. Kody's reaction was predictable. He tried to deflect, to turn it around, to make her feel guilty for breaking up the family. But his words didn't land anymore. They had lost their power. Janelle had changed. The woman sitting in front of him wasn't the same person who once asked permission to spend her own money. She wasn't the wife who stayed quiet to keep the peace. She wasn't the woman who let him define her worth. She was free. In that moment, the emotional cords that had tied her to him for decades finally snapped. After Kody left that day, Janelle sat in her car and cried. Not out of sadness, but relief. The kind of deep release that comes when you finally let go of something you should have walked away from long ago. That was the day Janelle Brown chose herself, completely, unapologetically, and without looking back. From that point forward, everything changed. Her finances, her home, her relationships, and most importantly, her peace. Coming up next, how Janelle turned her newfound independence into a stable and thriving life, and the surprising ways her children helped her rebuild her confidence. After walking away from Kody, Janelle faced the most uncertain chapter of her life. There was no roadmap, no promise of stability, and no one left to rely on except herself. But what she did have was something far more valuable: peace. For the first time in years, her mornings felt light. No waiting for permission, no guilt over small decisions, no feeling invisible in her own life. She woke up, brewed her own coffee, and looked out at a world that was entirely hers. Freedom came with its challenges. Bills still needed paying. Business wasn't always predictable. But there was a strange calm that came from knowing every success, every struggle, every decision now rested in her hands. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. As Janelle began to rebuild, she found strength in the most unexpected place: her children. They had seen everything: the arguments, the sacrifices, the years of emotional neglect. But now, they saw something different: a mother who refused to give up. Her kids became her biggest motivation. They cheered her on as she built her business, helped her move between places, and reminded her that she had already survived the hardest part: walking away. One by one, her children started to open up about their own experiences with the family system. They talked about the pressure to conform, the expectations that came with being part of a public polygamist family, and the relief they felt seeing their mother finally stand on her own. Those conversations healed wounds that had lingered for years. For the first time, Janelle wasn't just surviving for her family, she was leading by example. She showed them what it meant to take your life back, even when it meant starting from nothing. Her financial situation began to improve. She learned to manage her business income efficiently, set aside savings, and make smarter investments. Each milestone, no matter how small, felt like reclaiming a piece of herself that she'd lost. And with that confidence came something else: a sense of pride. Not the loud kind that needs validation, but the quiet kind that comes from knowing you built your own life from the ground up. Friends noticed the change. Fans noticed it too. The way she carried herself, the tone in her voice, the spark in her eyes, it was the look of someone who had finally found peace after years of chaos. For Janelle, the new dream wasn't about wealth or status. It was about balance, peace, and independence. She didn't need the mansion Kody promised or the fantasy life TLC once portrayed. She had something better: control over her own story. She started traveling more, visiting her kids, meeting friends, and embracing moments she never had time for before. Each trip felt like another reminder of how far she'd come. Her happiness wasn't about what she gained, it was about what she let go of. Coming up next, the quiet success that no one saw coming, how Janelle turned her independence into empowerment for others, and the new mission she's building beyond sister wives. Freedom changed Janelle in ways she didn't expect. What started as a personal battle for stability began to resonate far beyond her own life. Fans started sending messages, thousands of them. Women who felt trapped in unhappy marriages. Mothers who had lost their financial control. People who had spent years caring for everyone else but themselves. They saw something in Janelle that gave them hope. She wasn't a celebrity living an easy life. She was real. She had failed, struggled, and started over. And she was doing it all without bitterness. Janelle began to speak more openly about her experiences. Not as a reality star, but as a woman who'd learned hard lessons. In interviews and online, her tone was calm and direct. She didn't attack anyone. She didn't dwell on drama. She simply told the truth: how she lost control, how she rebuilt, and what freedom really felt like. That honesty connected with people in a way nothing else could. Her words carried the quiet authority of someone who had lived it. She wasn't trying to inspire. She was just being real. Soon, her messages shifted from survival to empowerment. She began posting small reminders about taking control of your finances, setting boundaries, finding peace in solitude. Each post sounded simple, but every word came from lived experience. And people listened. Women began tagging her in their own stories, Some were leaving toxic relationships. Others were finally opening their own bank accounts, starting businesses, or saying no to people who drained them. Janelle's quiet strength became a ripple effect. She never called herself an influencer, but in her own way, she became one, an example of strength built through loss. She showed that independence isn't about perfection. It's about choosing yourself, even when it scares you. In time, Janelle's platform grew. Not through controversy, but through authenticity. Brands noticed. Opportunities appeared. But Janelle was careful. She didn't want to become another face selling hope without meaning. Everything she endorsed, she used. Everything she shared, she believed in. Her new purpose was clear. It wasn't about proving Kody wrong or reclaiming fame. It was about helping others realize what she had learned too late, that freedom starts when you stop asking for permission. This new chapter of her life wasn't built on bitterness or revenge. It was built on peace. Coming up next, how Janelle's peaceful independence led to unexpected success, and the moment she finally looked back at her old life and realized she didn't miss it at all. It happened on an ordinary morning. No cameras, no audience, no headlines, just sunlight filtering through her window and the sound of her phone buzzing with messages from her kids. They were all checking in, laughing, planning their next visit. And for the first time in a long time, Janelle felt something she hadn't felt in years: peace without fear. She wasn't worried about who might be upset. She wasn't thinking about how her choices would affect someone else's reputation. She wasn't walking on eggshells. She was just content. That was the moment she realized she had already won. Not in the dramatic way people imagine success. No public confrontation, no revenge, no big announcement. Her victory was quiet. It came from knowing she had rebuilt her life without destroying herself in the process. When she looked around her home, it wasn't filled with luxury. It was simple, comfortable, and entirely hers. Every chair, every photo, every bill paid, it all represented independence. She didn't need validation from TLC, or approval from Kody, or attention from fans. The win was private. The reward was inner peace. Over time, Janelle's new way of living began to influence how others saw her. Friends who once pitied her now admired her. Even some of her former co-wives looked at her differently. She was proof that you could leave the system and still build something solid. Her relationship with her children deepened. They trusted her more, opened up to her more. They didn't see her as a victim of circumstance anymore. They saw her as a leader, someone who had walked through the fire and come out stronger. Even Kody, in his own way, noticed. Though he'd never say it aloud, there was a shift. He no longer had the power to control her emotions. She didn't react to him. She didn't chase explanations. She didn't need closure. Her silence became her strength. She didn't win by shouting louder. She won by walking away and letting peace do the talking. The world kept spinning, sister wives kept filming, drama kept selling, but Janelle had stepped out of that storm. She had built a quiet world where her happiness didn't depend on anyone else's chaos. She once thought she needed to fight for respect. Now she understood something much deeper. Respect comes when you no longer seek it from the wrong people. That realization was the ultimate freedom. Coming up next, the final chapter, how Janelle turned her transformation into a lasting legacy and what her new life truly looks like beyond sister wives. Today, Janelle's story isn't about what she lost. It's about what she found: freedom, balance, and an identity that no longer depends on a title or a relationship. She's not chasing attention. She's not trying to prove a point. She's simply living life on her own terms. Her days are quieter now, simpler. She spends time with her children, travels when she wants, and continues to grow her business at her own pace. There's no schedule dictated by filming, no tension about how her choices will be portrayed. Just peace and purpose. What's remarkable is how Janelle managed to rebuild without resentment. She never turned her story into a weapon. She never sought revenge. Instead, she used it as a lesson. Her calm strength became her message. In interviews, she often talks about gratitude. Not for what happened, but for what she learned. For the strength it gave her. For the independence she never knew she could have. When fans ask her for advice, her answer is always simple: don't wait for permission to be happy. It's not a slogan, it's how she lives. Her journey stands as a quiet rebellion against every expectation placed on her. The wife who was once seen as the practical one, the steady one, the quiet one, became the one who broke the cycle. She didn't escape the chaos by fighting it. She outgrew it. Janelle's story reminds us that freedom isn't loud. It doesn't always look like success or fame. Sometimes it's just the sound of your own peace after years of noise. She may no longer be the centerpiece of Sister Wives, but she became something greater, the proof that it's never too late to start over. When people look back at her story, They won't remember her as the woman who stayed too long. They'll remember her as the woman who finally walked away and built something better. Because the truth is, Janelle Brown didn't just survive the sister wives world. She graduated from it. And that, more than anything, is her legacy.